enormous privilege to be Chief Executive of the Social Mobility Foundation and to welcome you here on behalf of the SMF and the Department of Opportunities for this unbelievable event gathered here together. Big thank you to the Roundhouse for hosting us and supporting us and giving us a venue for this. A big thank you to all of you who have come together and been part of this, and a big thank you to all of you who support the cause and the issues that we're talking about. We all want to see a more equal society. We all want to live in a society, in a country where what you achieve is defined by who you are and how hard you work, not by what your parents did or where you grew up. But in Britain, we know it still pays, literally, it still pays to be privileged. There's a class pay gap worth thousands of pounds a year between employees from working class backgrounds and their better off peers. That gap holds back social mobility for individuals, it holds back whole communities of people. It holds us back from being the society that we want to be and the opportunities that we want young people to have. I must talk about the creative industries in this room and in this environment. Only 27% of people who work in the creative industries come from a working class background. Can't be right that creativity, imagination is limited to where you grow up and where you come from, but it's clear again that opportunity is limited. In music and the performing arts, it's 23%. So there's quite a bit of work to do for all of us. There's quite a bit of work to do in this sector. And it's such an opportunity for us to have this chance to look in a creative way at some of those issues. So today we're talking about class disadvantage, and we're talking about the fact that it is quite genuinely a horror story. And we're going to show you a horror film. In a minute, you're going to be treated to an exclusive screening of the film Stay Down, a horror film based on and bringing to life the real experience that people have had, the stories that people have told us, the experiences that we've all shared, brought to life in the most creative and beautiful way. Following on from the screening, we're going to have the enormous privilege of a conversation with the film's fantastic director, Thomas James, and Kevin Mayer, who's chief film critic for The Times. So you get a chance to hear a bit about what Thomas brought to this project, his ideas and his contribution, and we owe him such an enormous thank you, because what he's brought to this is beyond exciting, beyond beautiful, as you'll see in a minute. Following on from this, we will try and talk about how we might fix the problem, bring a bit of hope to the conversation. I'll be joined in a panel by Hannah, who's an alumni of the Social Mobility Aspiring Professionals Programme, by Holly Crompton, Social Mobility Lead at our partners PwC, one of very few organisations who measure and aim to close their class pay gap, and by Professor Sam Friedman, author of The Class Ceiling, who's the academic and writer on whose research so many of these concepts and so much of this information is based. Beyond today, this is just the beginning of our determination and our campaign to draw attention to class disadvantage and the class pay gap. If you're moved, if you're left angry, frustrated, if you want to know what you can do, please share the campaign, share the information, talk about it online, in person. We want everyone to know and understand and be driven by the issues that are our guiding mission. Today's event is being live streamed. Please promote the live stream, share the film, share all the opportunities to see this beautiful work and get the conversation started about the story it tells. All the social media handles you need are on the slide behind me, and you can use the hashtag StayDown. You can also sign up at www.staydown.co.uk to get more information about what you can do as an individual, if you're part of an employer, if you're motivated to get involved. But beyond all that, please be part of this conversation, be part of this beautiful thing that we've made that brings this story to life. And please, I'm going to hand over to, I think, Michaela from the Roundhouse, who is going to just welcome you on behalf of the Roundhouse and tee up the film. But please, welcome and enjoy.
Hello. Thank you hugely, Sarah, for that introduction. I'd also just like to welcome all of you to the Roundhouse. We're really, really excited to be hosting this afternoon for the premiere of Social Mobility's new and exciting campaign and film. I have long been an admirer of the work SMF does, but it's only recently I've been introduced to some of the brilliant team that work there, including Sarah, and understood more about the work they do and the impact they achieve. Having grown up myself in a working class family in Essex in the 1980s, showing my age a little bit there, being the first person in my entire family to go to university, and then entering an industry where I didn't feel I could fit in, had the right language, said the right things. I know how important the work organisations such as SMF do, and how in this climate of where we are now, they are needed more than ever. So the Roundhouse, for those of you that don't know us, we're not only a brilliant music and performing arts venue, which is just up the stairs in our main space, but we're also an organisation, a registered charity that works with thousands of young people, aged 11 to 25, across all creative disciplines, from music, media, performing arts, freelance and entrepreneurship, supporting young people moving into paid employment in the wider creative industries. So that happens in here. And then behind these doors are a whole series of studios, recording studio, podcast suites, rehearsal spaces for young people to use. We work with young people aged 11 to 25 from across London and beyond, ensuring that we reach all young people, but also targeting those from diverse backgrounds to ensure everyone can access opportunities. And as Sarah just said, we know the creative industries does not reflect society, and we're passionate about how we change this. So look, we are absolutely thrilled to be partnering with SMF. They're an organisation that absolutely shares our commitment here at the Roundhouse to ensure young people reach their potential, fulfil their ambitions, get the support they need, and we're really looking forward to working with SMF in the future. Thank you, enjoy the rest of the afternoon, and now I think I'm handing over to the film.
No, Mum. Don't work like that. Of course. I'll let you know, won't I? As soon as I know. Yeah, well, it ain't like that. Tell him he's bloody dreaming. I ain't getting him an old shit tip even if I do get it. Yeah, I know. Hang on a sec. Oh. Yeah. Yeah, I will come home, Mum. Soon. Still feels like he ain't properly left. But, yeah. All right, love you. Love you, Mum. Bye-bye. 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 Please.
Which floor?
Same.
Oh. Okay. So, do you work here?
Yeah.
Ah. Oh, me too. If all goes to plan.
All right. I've only just settled in myself, like, a few months. Bit mad, really.
I'm sure you'll get used to it.
Yeah.
Ah, it's my floor.
Yeah, me too.
Yes, of course it is.
Hey, Mickey.
Hey, I'll be alright.
Yeah. Don't work too hard, mate. Not worth it.
I won't.
No, night.
No, not me. Morning, Jonathan. How you doing?
2 seconds.
It'll just be a quick one.
What is it?
It's just the interview later on today. I was just wondering if you wanted anything prepped or for me to bring in the new monthly.
Whatever you have is fine. I'm sure we've got all the information we need.
Thank you.
You all right, lovely?
Hey, up. You all right?
Yeah. How you feeling?
Yeah, feel good?
Good. Good. You ready for it?
Sad. Not too worried. Other applicants a bit of a clown, like.
How's your mum feeling? Proud of you?
Yeah.
I would be too.
And last month I did dead sound, so
Yeah.
hopefully.
Top figures, I heard.
Yeah.
Sometimes it don't matter though, does it? It's not what they're looking for. You've done the work. They've seen how much you've grafted, so just go in there now and, you know, be like proper.
Proper.
Sometimes. Always. Never. Never the bottom.
Thank you.
You're dealing with the Merlin project?
Yes.
I didn't peg you as a fan.
Yeah, of course.
What is it that speaks to you in this piece?
I think he's trapped, isn't he? Maybe he doesn't know it.
Astute.
Oh, well, at least that's what I think Menshikov was trying to say here.
Ah, you're familiar with his work. Listen, I apologize for being a little brusque earlier. You know how it is.
Yeah, of course, no worries.
We're speaking at 4, aren't we?
I thought it was 3.
Let's make it 4. Anyway,
Yeah.
it's lovely to see you again. Yes, absolutely.
I'll send Dad your best.
Thank you, yes. We'll settle and meet him at Lytham Sedans.
Oh, it's you. You joining us? Come to the party.
Yeah, I'd really like that, but I've got loads of work to do, mate.
Oh, come on. We're celebrating. I got the job. Go on, we got the proper bubbles out. Yeah, try some. Oh, no? You've got to work. Yeah, come on, look. Surely you could just put an out-of-office hours email or something on.
Yeah, honestly, I'd really love to, but I don't think I can.
Suit yourself. More for us.
Yeah.
Now, Michael, the role you've applied for, it is, of course, client-facing. You'd be dealing with people whose money we manage on a day-to-day basis. How do you think that would go? I gather you may be less experienced in this domain.
Yeah, no, I think it'd be fine. I can be as charming as you like when I want to be, and I've recently been working on my...
Charm me then. I'm the client, we've just sat down, and you're trying to convince me.
Okay. Good morning, Mr. Jones. How are you doing?
Stop. Again?
Good morning, Mr. Jones. How are you today?
No, stop. No. Again, this time a little less, well, you know. These people are different from whoever you have experience with. Mickey. A different breed. I'm sorry, you're just not...
Sorry, Jonathan, I'm just not what?
Temper. Manners maketh. You see,
Yeah.
Michael.
Yep, I do see, yeah.
You're just not right for the role.
Hello. You're totally clapping the wrong person. You're clapping the wrong person. Yes, Sarah said I'm the film critic with the Times. I've been doing it for so long, and I end up interviewing directors. I've done them all, Scorsese, ODR, James Cameron, and it's always I'm in this position of interviewing somebody who's looking back on a career, and it sometimes can feel a bit sort of static. Whereas today, it's incredibly, genuinely exciting for me to talk to someone who, although a veteran, very much a veteran in their pop promo career, it seems to be, based on that alone and the promos, at a very exciting sort of launchpad stage for fiction filmmaking. So with no further ado, I'd like to welcome Thomas James onto the stage.
Brilliant. Hello.
I'll get a bit closer.
How you doing? That bass was intense, wasn't it?
So I think the format here, we're going to chat, and while we're talking, if things pop into your head, we can do questions after about 20 minutes. So I'm sure you will have things to talk about. Very just the most obvious question: how did you hear about this, and what was the brief pitch to you?
I mean, the guys at Creature came to me with it, with the sort of idea of taking the sort of the horrors and the realities of everything the guys are doing, and twisting that into a horror film, and creating this sort of campaign that sort of draws those two parallels. So that was sort of presented to me, and I just sort of jumped on that because it was an incredible idea. So.
Did it help that the social mobility idea? I've seen your promos, and there's an interesting sort of if you haven't seen Thomas's work, it's amazing. But it has a consistent expression of this interiority. Someone's on a hair trigger mode of a breakdown in a lot of the promos, and. Was that just too good to be true, that the issues we're talking about here were reflected in that?
Yeah, completely. I mean, everything that is being dealt with here is so internalized, isn't it? It's never really discussed, especially in a platform like this, really, or amongst people. So I think having that as a vehicle to internalize it, but show, as you sort of said, some of my work takes that internal world and makes it real. It was, it was perfect sort of opportunity to do that. Really.
Are you a horror movie fan?
Yeah.
Can't you tell?
Yeah, massive.
Were there any in particular that you were thinking of?
I think what's quite interesting is that you jumped on that idea of sort of things that are internal. Being made real, and I think those are a lot of things I was looking at for this. So like Raw or Teton, where they sort of take something which is quite an internal problem or something that is internalized and have really discussed, and then make something truly horrible out of it, and sort of quite body horror-esque, I think, because I quite like the idea of taking those emotional issues and basically destroying Michael's face with them.
Yeah. This is like my third time seeing it. First time seeing it on a big screen, and I still can't work out, in the Red Nightmare sequences, is it like prosthetics, or is it just optics, or what? How did you do it? Basically?
I mean, that's an amazing compliment to the VFX artists.
Yeah.
It was me getting the guys to pull funny faces down the camera, and then me in my living room with a mannequin's head pouring silicone, stretching it all over it and stuff, and then an incredible team just sort of plonking those two things together.
Wow. So in terms of writing the story, there's a Sam Fender promo of yours called The Borders, and it's just mind-blowing because it's like 5 minutes long.
It's 5 or 6. Yeah.
And it tells more story in 5 minutes than a lot of the features I see every day. Tell me about the length of this, or how long? What's dictated whether how much story you wanted to put in what length of time?
I think originally I promised 3 minutes, and then it just sort of grew and grew because it's so it's so dear to my heart that once we started writing it, it was it just sort of became a much bigger thing, basically.
I have a question about little bits of it. There's things when you're a really boring jaded film critic and you watch a movie, you look for a moment early on where your shoulders can drop and you can go, oh, I'm in the hands of a filmmaker, knows what he's doing. I don't have to be going, oh, is this going to be terrible? And well, one of the major moments for me in that is when they both reach for the up button. You know, at the lift lobby. I love that because it's metaphorical. It's both going up. You know, I don't know. I can't tell which finger actually gets the up button, but it's a gorgeous little detail. And I wondered, where did it come from? Was that on the day, or was that always on paper?
I'm pretty sure that was written. I think because there is the whole thing with the lifts going up and down, and you know that being metaphoric in a sense. But I don't think it's Michael that presses the button because. Yeah. But yeah, that's an interesting moment you've picked there.
Yeah.
I quite like it.
In terms of, I don't know, your experience of the media and what Sarah was talking at the start, do you feel there's a huge problem with class imbalance?
Yeah, totally. I mean, especially within the film industry, I think I'll be very careful how I word this. Yeah, I mean, nepotism's rife in that industry, and it's very much reserved for people, especially when they're younger, who have time, because you need 2 years to do the internships. You need time to go and make your short films or go and make your promos for no money or whatever. So, yeah, there's certain elements of it being gatekept, I think. And I'm sure that's the same across all creative industries, but film to me is, it's pretty bad.
And how have you broken through the gates?
I don't know, just kept at it, I suppose. I've been very lucky. I've had a lot of talented people around me and people who have maybe pushed me quite hard, and you know, I've just been very lucky, I think.
Do you feel you have to work exceptionally hard in a way that maybe some of your peers might not?
I don't. I mean, that's quite a tough question, isn't it? But I'll always feel like I have to work hard, and that might be something that was, you know, instilled in me at a slightly younger age and things. But I don't know. I don't. Yeah, probably. Yeah.
Sure. Okay, back to the details popping into my head that I love about the film. One is also the buttons, sometimes never always, you know. That's incredible. It's such a mind-blowing moment also because it's the black character who has to tell the white guy about it, and it's the black character because, you know, racism is so explicit that he's had to learn that quicker than Michael's character. Again, has this come from life, or is this...
That actually happened to me, the 3-button thing.
All right.
But I don't think it wasn't meant in a sinister way, but I had no idea about that. But it's quite interesting where it comes from. It's something to do with a king who got too fat, and then all the aristocracy undid their bottom button. And it's actually, I didn't realise, there's a whole load of rules about things like that. But that genuinely happened to me in a toilet.
That's happened to me too. It happened to me at the Cannes Film Festival. I was wearing a waistcoat, and someone came over to me and said, "Never do the back bottom." Oh, okay, whatever.
For a fat king.
Yeah,
anything for a fat king.
What about the shooting of it? How are you with the actors? You know, I really like the performance on the film. I love you know, Michael's hangdog expression. It's so endearing, and it's great for a central character, even for a film that short. You know, the bit where she just says, you know, proper, that chat, and he just says proper back, and there's a million things going on in his face. So how are you with actors as a director? Maybe that's a question with the actors, but how do you feel?
Yeah, I mean, that's a question for them rather than me.
No, but some directors are really visual, and they're just like, yeah, the actors, we can do that later. But you know,
I think because of the nature of the script and what we're talking about, I think it was quite personal for the guys as well. Like, you know, myself and Michael had discussions about it. Myself and Joe, myself and Jonathan, and you know, to me, it was very important that those guys were putting their spin on it as well. So there's improvised lines in there, and there's stuff that was brought to that from them. And I think, to me, as a director with an actor, it's a collaboration, isn't it? It's never like I don't see them as sort of meat puppets. I think it's you're bringing them in to tell a story. Yeah. And am I missing the microphone? Because I keep it in there.
I don't know. Is he audible?
Can you hear me? Yeah. Sweet.
Yeah. Cows. One of the Hitchcock's actors are like cattle. I think Hitchcock said that.
I like meat puppets. I think
Yeah.
it's
And okay, in terms of shooting it as well, but yeah, the lobby sequence at the end. Could you tell me how that came about? Yeah, with all the actors.
Yeah, the lobby was actually quite a tough scene to shoot in itself. I don't know how much detail I'm allowed to go into this. Where's someone from production? Brilliant. So we had 2 locations pull out because they didn't want to be associated with the message of the film, especially if they have recognizable architecture, which was sort of mind-blowing, really. So yeah, we eventually found, I think it's a college or a university for pathology, I think. But yeah, obviously we just needed it to look like a sort of corporate hellhole. And their place sort of did. I hope no one's here from the location. But yeah, it was strange. I found that quite weird. But also, not surprising. And then in terms of the actual action and stuff, I mean, yeah, it's obviously quite a physical thing, which I think Michael did an incredible job with, because it almost sort of veers into physical theatre in a sense. I think that scene.
Is he doing a handstand or is it?
That stuff. Yeah. That's me holding a box next to him, and then someone pulling his legs up, and then we've just painted it out. It was a
ruining the magic. Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah. And what about the rights as well? Do you pay for no alarms and no surprise? How does that happen for the closing credits?
Oh no, I think they sort of, again, production chat at me if I'm getting this wrong. I'm pretty sure they gave us that. I think I might be wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was lucky, wasn't it? Christ. Yeah, and then we were very lucky to have it sort of re-scored and with an incredible sort of new version of the vocals, just making it really haunting. I mean, obviously, Tom York's version is quite haunting anyway, but we wanted to sort of make it weirder.
Yeah. Because that's the first time I've seen it with proper sound, with real sound. Are you in a sound suite somewhere? Because it's really deafening.
I mean, the bass on that was insane. I've never heard it at that level. I think it sort of knocked me for 6. But I'm quite into all of that. I think it's more, I'm used to. I've just got 2 little monitors next to a laptop. Yeah. I haven't got whatever in God's name that subwoofer is. Yeah. But I enjoyed it. I think.
Yeah. Purely for selfish satisfaction, can I ask about what you're doing after it, or I keep reading that you've got a feature planned, or you're working on a feature?
Yeah, so there's hopefully a feature next year. So it's in casting at the moment. It's a romantic comedy.
It's obviously a joke. Yeah. Just checking. Okay. So it's in. All right. So it's not. It's in pre-production, basically, not shooting.
No, there's no shoot scheduled as such, but it's being cast at the moment.
Okay. Right. All right. I literally can't see anything beyond the front row. So if you have a question, you could shoot your hand up. Oh, there we go. That's amazing. And someone can maybe pass you a mic if you need it. Oh. Don't be shy. Oh, there you go.
Hello, my name's James. I'm sufficiently old that the pernicious system of internship didn't exist when I started my working life. And I'm very interested that you raised it in this conversation, because it seems to me one of the worst aspects of early stage employment, one of the most regressive, because you know the arguments, but particularly it discriminates against people geographically, because if they don't live where the centre of the employment is, they can never afford, for instance, London. They can never afford to come to London to stay here to do particularly an unpaid internship. And worse than that, I think often it's used by employers across the creative industries as an exploitative form of adding value for no outlay. And training is not really a substantial part of internships. Sorry, that's a very preachy question, but my question is, can we all of us agree in the room that most internships are frankly not for the benefit of interns, and that unpaid internships should be actually unlawful?
Yeah, completely.
Thomas, did you do any of a version of internship or free work?
I did about 2.5 weeks and then just left. And that was actually, so I sort of started in doing sort of illustration and art direction and stuff like that, and very quickly realised that I wasn't going to learn anything, or as the gentleman said, it's just free labour. You just, yeah, they're completely horrific things that definitely shouldn't exist as a thing for people to lean on, I suppose, unless there is a genuine trade-off of, remuneration and skills acquired. I think it's a strange thing. But yeah, I think I did it for about 2.5, 3 weeks and then stopped.
Okay. Does anybody else want to ask a question?
I do. Hi. Me.
Oh, there.
Hello.
Hi, I'm Alex. I used to work at the Social Mobility Commission and now in DEI, but I actually have a background as a director. So I used to be in music videos and commercials. And one of the huge, huge problems is not internships. It's the budgets, as that director will testify. So when you do, if you want to get into TV commercials, you've got to do music videos. Music videos are paid peanuts. When you start off in commercials, then it's hugely competitive, and then you hope to start a few little bit of branded content online, and hopefully that moves you up the ranks. So it's a real big predicament. And I just wanted a sort of open question to everybody here, really, who works in the industry, is how we fix this, because the budgets have dropped significantly, which means that nobody who's a director can hope to make any kind of living really until much later, or if they get very lucky. I mean, I held down 3 jobs while I was a film director. And I know everybody presumes that I've got money behind me, but I've also had elocution lessons. So it's an open question to everyone, because that's the reason I left the industry. I just could not make a living. And, what do you all think? And has it changed? Has it got better since I left, 8 years ago?
Music videos?
Yeah.
No.
Usual shit.
As you say, the budgets are going down, but expectancy, I would say, is going up. Yeah. So people are still delivering incredible pieces of work with no money, off the back of freebies and just talent and favors and things. So, record labels are happy to drop those budgets because someone is always keen to do them, as you say, because they are a path into the next thing. So it's almost quite a horrible cycle where people will still essentially keep creating these things with just, relying upon their talent and favors and essentially back-breaking labor for, large record companies to make loads of money from. But yeah, I don't know if anyone else wants to
It's a little side
jump on that burning bridge with me.
Yeah. A sort of a side comment on that is that when I was looking through your pop promos, one of the questions I was going to have was, it must have been such a come down after working on those multi-million-dollar budgets, because there's the second Paloma Faith video looks like the Hunger Games or something. I was thinking, wow, he's got so he must be so enjoyable making a pop promo with so much money, but that's clearly not the case.
That Paloma one was a slightly different thing. There was quite a lot of money on that one.
Good. I'm not going mad. Okay. I'm presuming, Sarah, that you're going to have the proper social mobility chat after this. So I'm aware that I'm taking up social mobility chat with Film Chat. But has anybody got any more questions? Oh, sorry.
Hi. Yeah.
That was beautiful. Thank you so much. I just wanted to ask a couple of quick questions, actually one to each of you. So to Kevin, I was just wondering, what do you think about class in criticism, in film criticism? Because it seems to me that, there's an interesting thing here about how we come to understand some types of art as being more valuable, beautiful, higher quality than others, and that's a lot to do with people like yourself, the intermediaries who tell us what's good or not. Is there a sort of class problem in your mind, in your industry, and what do you think some of the effects of that might be, if you think there is? And then I suppose the question to Thomas was about, you showed there, I think, really beautifully the kind of notion of kind of corporate polish that people have to kind of assimilate to. But I wondered if you had any reflections on what I would call the kind of behavioural code looks like in your own industry, where there might be a more informal kind of sense of what's acceptable, but that might in other ways be similarly insidious in terms of a vehicle for class privilege to be reproduced. Just wondered if you had any reflections on what it looks like in your own world. Thanks.
Do you want to go first? Because I need to think about that.
Give you so much time to think about it. Okay, very quickly. Of the three major broadsheets, The Guardian, The Telegraph, and The Times, I'm the only one who's not posh and who's not English. And didn't go to Oxbridge. So, yes, it goes to the heart of the entire identity politics debate, which is, do I filter everything through the sort of cultural baggage? Does every film I gave The Banshees of Inisherin 5 stars, and these commenters in the Times said, that's just because you're Irish. I thought, everyone else is giving it 5 stars. It's just very odd that, but I'm aware that stuff exists. There used to be a Scottish film critic, and it used to really annoy me that she would give all the Scottish films, extra praise. I thought, well, that's not really helpful. So, in a purist sense, I would love to think that every critic approaches a work and divests themselves of everything and tries to meet it on this sort of very fundamental, there's only 7 stories that all cultures share, all that sort of stuff, and that we're just trying to, it's about, stasis, and then meeting an object, overcoming an object, and there's these primal things, because we're all going to die, we're in a cycle of, birth, death, renaissance, there's these tiny core things that we all share. So I'd love to think that every critic who watches a film is only trying to meet it on these things and dumping all the, I went to Oxbridge, and, I don't see films about working class people. I also think that, cream rises, and everybody loves Nil by Mouth because Nil by Mouth is an amazing film. And so, yeah, I think like with every argument today, there's this horrible sliding scale, and it's all about nuance and grey. We all live in the grey, but everybody just wants you to be on one end of the scale. And so, I don't have a specific argument. I know that. I feel liberated by the fact that I'm not posh and English and went to Oxbridge. And I think you would think the Times, which is this 200-year-old establishment and is the tradition incarnate, but the Times have only ever said to me, can you do it? Can you do it now? Their imperative is, and can you do it really well? And that's why I was asking you about working really hard, because I work really hard. I have no friends, I have no social life, I have nothing. I just work like an absolute dog. And I think maybe the reason I work like a dog is because I'm aware that the Oxbridge posh people probably don't have to work as hard, and I have to meet them through different criteria. But that was such an answer of yes and no's and yes and no's and yes and no's. But I find more and more I live in yes and no's. I don't have one answer for anything anymore. It's just quite confusing. But that's the best I can do.
I mean, that was incredible. I don't really know. I'm going to sort of follow up with that. But I think, to your point, I think it's obviously quite nuanced. There are obviously examples I can pull out and say, I've been on a set and realised I was, after quite an open discussion, realised I was the only person who wasn't privately educated on the entire set, which sort of blew my mind a little bit. So there's definitely examples like that I can sort of pull for you, but I think, it is, as you say, it's super nuanced. So in terms of there being sort of explicit examples, I don't really know, but it's slightly more unsaid. I think that's my experience of it, and you know, not being posh and not having been part of that world. That you can see little clubs forming, and you can see how that works. And to your point, I think you know, you definitely do have to work a little bit harder, maybe, but yeah, I don't know. It's difficult.
Just completely brought the energy down.
Sorry. Very sorry.
Any more questions? Well, if there's no more, is it time for you to wrap up? Or yes? Okay, well, then this is the film part. And so, thank you so much, Thomas, for your film and for your chat.
Very much.
Hi everyone. Hello. My name is Yomi Adegoke. I'm a journalist and author from Croydon. And I am thrilled to be your chair for tonight's panel. I firstly want to thank the Social Mobility Foundation and Department for Opportunities for having me. This is very much a topic and conversation that's close to my heart. I was having some, for lack of a better phrase, war flashbacks to my internship years. So thanks very much for having me. So I would first like to start by introducing, or rather having our panelists introduce themselves. If you guys would like to come up, please, and if you give them a very warm welcome. Hello, everyone. Hi. So if we could just go round and have everybody introduce themselves, just tell us a little bit about what it is that you do and why this is a conversation that matters to you.
So I'll start. So hi again, I'm Sarah. Still enormously proud to be the Chief Exec of Social Mobility Foundation. Even more proud now. And this matters to us. I mean, we're here, this is mission for us. This is our job. This is what we're here for. I had a real moment watching all those names go down the screen, all those people who'd worked on this, because sometimes when you do this job, this feels very fragile, very individual. It feels like a thing that is a small number of people trying to do a big job. And seeing a lot of people who care about this and are part of this really feels exciting and really feels moving, because it feels still just as big a job, but it feels like more people are in the tent trying to do this work. So I'm here to get as many people into that tent as I possibly can.
Thank you, Sarah.
Hi everyone, I'm Holly Crampton and I'm the Social Mobility Lead at PwC, so we're a professional services firm. And our strategy on social mobility focuses on 4 main areas. So recruitment, looking to recruit more people from lower socioeconomic backgrounds into the firm. Development and progression, so looking at once those people are in the firm, how do we support them to develop and progress at the same rate as their peers. Community engagement and advocacy, so generally advocating for the importance of the issue. We've been working on this issue for a number of years, and we formed our strategy back in 2017, and for the last 2 years we've published our socioeconomic background pay gap, and we were one of the first employers to do that. And for us, the business case for social mobility really isn't just about doing the right thing. It's good for society, it's good for the economy, and it's really about talent and competitive advantage as a business as well. So we've published our pay gap. The reason for our pay gap is that we have a lack of representation at senior levels. So it's not about paying 2 people in the same role different amounts. It's absolutely about progression and helping those people who join our firm from lower socioeconomic backgrounds to get to those senior levels. And I just wanted to touch on a point around internships and work experience. So we've done a lot of thinking about this over the past few years, and our work experience programs are all paid and all applied for through a fair recruitment process. So any questions I can answer around that later, I'm happy to. Thank you.
Thank you. And sorry, can we get a round of applause for paid internships?
Hello everyone, my name is Hannah Ayane and I joined the Social Mobility Foundation's Aspiring Professionals programme back in 2018, and I can honestly say it was quite pivotal towards my career progression. Essentially helped people like myself from low socioeconomic backgrounds gain professional networks and just helps with their career progression. So I was very grateful to be able to work at places like Warner Music Group, Parliament, that were all paid, and also they actually got me my current job now, which I work is at Accenture as a management consultant analyst across the communications and media industry. So very thankful for that. And I'm not genuinely just saying that. It's just a privilege to be here, and yeah, very grateful for the Social Mobility Foundation for what they've done.
Thanks so much.
Hi everyone. So I'm Sam Freedman. I'm a sociologist based at London School of Economics. I've been doing research on class for sort of 10, 12 years now. My colleague Daniel Lorison and I first sort of developed this idea of the class pay gap back in 2014-15, where we took some sort of big data sets and really asked that question about how your background sort of affects your ability to progress. And we've spent sort of the years after really trying to dig into the why question of that pay inequality, and it's taken us behind the closed doors of Channel 4, the civil service, big multinational accountancy firm, doing really in-depth interviews with people about their lived experience. And I think, it was what was really beautiful about that film, and that the phrase that you were talking there about interiority, I think is really powerful, because having spoken to people in this kind of anonymous interview setting where they have the opportunity to say the unsaid, people reflect on all those little micro political moments that you so beautifully brought out, I think, in the film, and that add up to such a powerful sense of feeling like you don't belong, or that you do, that you are a fish in water, as for your character. So yeah, just want to say how much I enjoyed it.
Thank you so much. Yeah. So I'd first like to ask whether the film scared you. And if it did, do you feel that it clearly demonstrated the absolute horror of classism in the workplace? Who would like to go first on that? Holly, can I pick on you?
Of course, yeah. I think there's an issue, isn't there? And it's highlighted it brilliantly. And it's scary, and it's using shock tactics to attract attention to the issue, which is fantastic. As I said previously, our socioeconomic background pay gap is really about progression to the senior levels of the organisation, and I think that's exactly what the film was bringing out. So yeah.
Thank you. And do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I think it perfectly captures Halloween. It's such a scary concept. The fact that it still exists in 2022 is actually kind of crazy. It's so outdated. And the fact, not being able to bring your best self to work, they encourage that, but the fact that you can't even do that, not even show your personality, is just kind of hiding away in a mask. So yeah, it's a very scary concept, and I think the film did a great job at just capturing that. I think representation as well is such a strong thing that should be encouraged in the workplace, and walking into a meeting and then not seeing yourself, it's not great. And yeah, I just think did a great job at capturing that. So yeah.
Thank you, Sam. You've already spoken very nicely about the film, but I'd still like to, if you don't mind.
I mean, I've kind of said it. I think that this kind of psychosocial aspect of people's experience just came out really powerfully, I think, in the way you kind of understood the character's internal processes. And some of the scenes that really resonated, I think, in terms of conversations that I've had with so many people over the years, particularly that moment in front of the painting, where you're sort of this kind of sense of particularly, I think, the way cultural knowledge comes into everyday conversation. And that's why I was asking the question to Kevin, because it might be a question about film criticism, but what I've noticed is that notions of highbrow or sort of higher forms of culture, whether that's what you do in your holidays, what you watch on television, come into people's everyday experiences in the workplace all the time in different kind of ways. You know, and so this sense that people have that there's a kind of a way of seeing that they have to be able to kind of understand in order to pass as acceptably cultivated. I think is there in lots of different ways, in subtle ways, in different workplaces, but came across really well in the film. And I think that sense of kind of panic for people when they don't feel that they have that. And I suppose the question, that's what I was kind of asking, is I think often when you take a step back, it's fairly shaky, the kind of grounds on which those kind of aesthetic principles, you know, that we sort of tend to think of as kind of being universally good or bad sit. And so, you know, I think it showed sort of that a little bit in the film.
Thank you, Sam. I'm glad I asked. Thank you. And Sarah?
So actually the fear for me was the responsibility that we have to treat this issue with so much respect and so much care and to get it right. And so the fear for me has got less and less all the way through this project, because working with Creature and the team that did the film, you know, I felt more and more confident that we were doing this right. And sharing the trailer with people and the reactions that we've had with people saying, oh, you've got that just right, you know, you've captured it. So all that thing, the buttons and the kind of a little less, you know. So I have felt less frightened all the way through the project as it's got more and more clear. But I think, you know, absolutely what people are capturing, you know, Thomas talks about internalised. There's a word we sometimes use when we're talking to people about this kind of stuff, and it's insidious. It's the kind of things that if you know, and you recognise it and you feel it. And yet other people will say to you, no, that's not happening. That's not, or it's just, you know, sorry, love, if you're not good enough, you know, you can't expect. And so it is that absolute sense that, am I going mad, or is this really happening, that I thought we captured beautifully. And that makes me sad that we've captured that so well. When I've had people giving me feedback already on the trailer and they've said, you know, I love it, it captures my experience. And I'm like, I'm so pleased. Well, no, I'm not so pleased. I'm so sad. I'm so glad you like it, but I'm so sorry that you recognise this. But so, I feel the team know my emotions are always quite readily available, and I feel quite emotional about this all the way through. But the fear has got less and less as I felt more and more confident that the story we're telling is the right story, and that we're telling with so much kind of care and respect.
Thank you so much, Sarah. I definitely think there is a level of gaslighting, just that you touched on, in terms of how we do speak about class and whether someone's good enough, and whether it comes down to just sheer ability, and a meritocracy, as we know, is often, if not always, isn't the case. I feel like that mindset is often able to thrive because of silence around classism. And I feel like this is probably, I might be an aberration here, but for me, it feels like one of the few times I've really had an in-depth kind of conversation about class in a space like this. Certainly, potentially within a film like this. Why do you think, if you think, that class is difficult to discuss in terms of it being, some of my friends refer to it as an ism that is almost acceptable. I'm interested in whether that's a concept you guys agree with, and if you think there is a sort of acceptable silence around classism. Would anyone like to take that?
Yeah, I could. It definitely is an uncomfortable conversation. You know, the word class can drop like a stone into a conversation. Some of it is because it requires talking about some quite personal stuff. You know, even the simple fact, like, we ask employees to collect socioeconomic background data. It's critical to kind of measuring things. It's critical, certainly, to the sort of ambition that Holly's talking about at PwC. But to do that, you have to say to people, were you eligible for free school meals? Now, that is something that's very personal, not necessarily comfortable. May take you back to a time in your life you're not happy talking about, or you want to have got away from. And of course, you're challenging people who have been successful to think about whether all of their success is their own work, or maybe they've had a kind of good headwind of privilege and opportunity. So it's very personal, whilst also being very political. But I think it's also, you know, once you open up that conversation, and one of the great joy of the work that we do, whether it's, you know, working directly with young people on the programme, giving them opportunities, or working with employers, one of the great joy is when you start the conversation and you're bold enough to talk about it, and then people say, yeah, absolutely, let me tell you my story, let me tell you what it's like. Because once you do say it, turns out everybody knew it was going on, and people do feel very liberated to have that conversation. And it can be very powerful and mobilised, and certainly the employers that we work with that are having these conversations, you know, those are brilliant conversations to have if you can get past the uncomfortable.
Thank you so much. Does anyone have anything to add? Holly, you look like you have like...
Thanks. I was just going to add that we've done a lot of work around gathering socioeconomic background data over the past 4 years from our staff, and it can be sensitive. You know, it isn't an area that everybody wants to talk about, and I think you know, going back 4 years, we had about 25% of our staff that had disclosed their socioeconomic background to us, answering those questions, like the free school meals question, school type, etc. And we had to do a lot of work to improve that. So we've done a big campaign, we've raised awareness across the organisation, we've provided role models. So we actually got our chief people officer at the time, Laura Hinton, who's from a lower socioeconomic background herself, to start by sharing her story and saying, I grew up on a council estate, I was on free school meals, to encourage people across the organisation to feel comfortable talking about it, sharing their own stories. And what that's led to is an increase in the data that we've got to 80%. So we now have 80% and 85% for partners, which is how we can do all of this work around analysing our pay gap, looking at the data, identifying where there are issues, and then taking action on it. So I think it is just really important to reassure people that it's confidential, you know, what it's going to be used for and why you're collecting it. You're not collecting it to make, you know, decisions about their career that you shouldn't be using that data for. You're doing it to make it a fairer place to work and to be able to progress.
Thank you so much. That's incredibly encouraging in a conversation that can feel quite bleak at times. Do you guys have anything that you'd like to add to that?
I think at the end of the day, I think it's just a fear of judgment, really. And when you're the minority, it's very difficult to speak out about something when you're surrounded by people from middle class, for example. I do think it should start from management, try to encourage, you know, people lower down the workforce to have these conversations, be more open and more authentic, and have genuine conversations about these issues, because they exist. People are feeling, you know, isolated. They're not feeling comfortable to be their best selves. So I think it should start there to find like a better and more inclusive workforce. And I think, yeah, conversations like this are really great to have, especially with people that may not know much about the issue. So yeah, I think that's how it should start from senior management. I think that's how it should create that more conversation.
Thanks, Anna.
Yeah, I'll just piggyback on that. I think you're right. I think it's when people use the word class, it often invokes pretty visceral feelings of judgment in various ways. You know, either feelings of judgment of others or feelings of being judged. You know, it's explicitly about hierarchy, particularly in a society like ours, which is so class-ridden. So that's inevitably sensitive, and I think actually particularly sensitive in the context we're talking about. I think Sarah mentioned this among people from privileged backgrounds. I think, you know, often this debate is framed about, you know, the barriers that those from working class backgrounds face. The other side of that has to always be part of this picture. It's beautifully illustrated in the film, but there has to be a sense in which you don't, people don't feel that visceral sense of defensiveness about their own privilege. And hopefully with this sort of thing and something like a class pay gap, you can start to some extent depersonalize it. I mean, even when Thomas was talking and you asked the question about hard work, you know, there's something slightly embarrassing about having to pass that in terms of your own individual trajectory, right? Nobody knows exactly what particular element of background or privilege, you know, makes up where they've got to. And that's not really where we want the conversation to be. We want the conversation to be on this more wider structural societal level, where we can see these incredibly powerful trends that I think most people can agree with are insidious and need to change. And I think if you can start making the conversation something that people can sign up to without feeling that, particularly in terms of people like me from very privileged backgrounds, not feeling that immediate sense of defensiveness. Oh, okay, so you telling me I don't deserve to be where I've got to, and start to sort of piggyback on this as being, you know, as being part of that conversation themselves, rather than thinking it's just for, you know, it's just that there's a group for people at work from working class background. Obviously, I'm not going to be part of that. Do you know what I mean? And so I think that's kind of where I would.
Thank you so much. Hannah, I think you touched on this a little bit, just in terms of what we can actually do, but I'd like to take that out to everybody in terms of how you think we can create a workplace that sort of values working class people more. What are the practical, and it's a big question, and societal steps that we can take? So I'm sorry, Sarah.
So, yeah, okay. So the work that we do with partners is about, it's about making sure people can get in. It's about opportunities. So it's about working with programs like us to bring young people in, both because that offers opportunity to the young people we work with who are brilliant and deserve that opportunity, but it's also transformative the other way, because you get into that conversation, when our mentors work with young people, they get into the conversation, they understand a bit more that it's not that those young people weren't working hard enough or weren't making enough applications. It's about some of the barriers. It's about some of the recognition of the structural things. And Sam's right, you have to have this as a kind of structural conversation. You do also have to get personal again, because you have to get people motivated to say, look who you would miss out on. Look what this is about people. So thinking about the getting in, and then thinking about, it's what we've just talked about, is normalising the conversation. It's recognising that class, socioeconomic background, it's part of everyone's story. We've all got different stories and complicated stories, but just normalising that it's part of the story. So we need to make it part of the conversation, whether what we're doing is setting targets or measuring parameters or looking at a new process, just normalising it into part of the conversation to say, how is this going to help or hinder the mission to make sure everyone can get on in our organisation? So it's not simple at all. It's complex. It's long-term stuff. As Holly says, some of our partners have been working on this for a long time, and they're making progress, but they're not done, and they're not. It's not finished. But it is about opening up to understanding and the conversation, and it is also about just making sure those opportunities keep turning.
Thank you. Would anyone like to add anything to that?
I can add, if that's all right. Yeah, so I think for us, it's definitely about recruitment. It's definitely about progression. And within that, in terms of progression, we're looking at creating an inclusive culture generally across all diversity characteristics. We are looking at setting targets for the proportion of our people from lower socioeconomic backgrounds and the proportion of our recruits from lower socioeconomic backgrounds as well. But also, as a big business, it's about our responsibility to do community outreach and engagement, to really think about not just upskilling people to come and work at PwC from a selfish perspective, but also just encouraging people to develop the skills to be successful in whatever their career of choice is, because again, that's good for the economy, it's good for society, and as a large employer, we've really got that responsibility to do that. And I also think it is about the final strand of our strategy, which is about advocacy. So, getting out there and talking to people about what you're doing, encouraging others to do it. We hope that by publishing our pay gap, we'll encourage others to do it and follow suit. So yeah, I think it's about all of those things, but definitely start with recruitment would be our advice, I think, because I think that's where we started a number of years ago, and it's a really important aspect.
Yeah, I think you guys definitely touched on that. But I think it's also about retaining the talent, not just hiring someone because they're diversity higher and then a company claiming that they're diverse because they've got someone from like a low minority background on their website. I think it's well and good to do that, but actually it's also about keeping that talent, seeing their career progression, making sure that they feel comfortable in the workplace. Because diversity of thought is such a powerful thing. You can get different skill sets from different cultural differences. So I think it's so important to do that, and just having more conversations like this, more awareness, more partnerships with the Social Mobility Foundation and other charities that focus on it. I think that's.
Yeah, I think people have mentioned the main things, but just to add a couple, I think while we stay on the structural, that there's definitely a role for politics here. We talked about banning unpaid internships. It's just an obvious. It's an obvious one, but it's not fully there. Lots of people do it voluntarily, but it's just an obvious one and one that could change. Similarly, there's Rob here from Wheel, but I'm part of a group of people trying to push for class background to be included in equalities legislation as a protected characteristic. I think that's got to be part of this, to sort of, symbolically to put class on the same sort of footing legally. And then I think I would just go back to the culture bit and what was so beautifully illustrated again in the film, this idea of kind of the misrecognition of merit, all those little moments where, people, the way you speak, the notion of your sort of aesthetic judgment, all of these things that routinely become part of assessments of those in senior positions about whether somebody fits, whether they're partner material, or all of that sort of stuff, that when you take a step back, you can see it's just complete nonsense. It has really very little to do with doing that job well, right? But it's misrecognized as powerful. And I think having a conversation like that, illustrated with a visual prompt like a film like that within organizations, I think could be incredibly powerful for kind of, just starting that conversation. Just to give you one anecdote on that from when I was doing the research at Channel 4, one of the things we found there was that this kind of ability to sort of drop cultural references from high art forms, even when they were making very mainstream programs, came up all the time, particularly among people around the commissioning department. And I remember talking to one of the senior commissioners at the end of the interview, and he said, what are you finding? And I told him about this kind of this culture of kind of high art sort of referencing in key meetings and stuff. And he said, oh, that's really interesting. I mean, it doesn't really apply to me, but thanks. And he went back to his team and told them about it, and they were like, you do that all the time. And he emailed me being like, oh, that's thank you so much, or this is really interesting, because by actually opening up this conversation, you can sort of see those elements that you take for granted because a lot of this stuff is stuff we're not even really conscious of. You're making that visible for people and then perhaps changing behaviours.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Holly, this one's specifically for you. Obviously, PwC is one of the few organisations that have published their socio-economic pay gap. Could you please tell us why that decision was taken, and also what the benefit, I suppose, in exposing that gap was and has been for PwC?
Yeah, absolutely. So it was the next step on our journey on social mobility. So we've been working on this for a number of years. As I said, we're still very much on a journey. We've got lots more work to do, and this was the logical next step. Once we've got all the data, we already published our gender and ethnicity pay gaps, and we wanted to take the next step and publish the socioeconomic background one. I think the key reason was transparency, and one of the key benefits is that transparency really builds trust. So, it builds trust in your workforce. People can see that you're really serious about the issue, that you're addressing the issue. It builds trust with potential recruits. So people from lower socioeconomic backgrounds who want to come and work at PwC can see that we are serious about it, and that, we want them to come and work for us. I think it also shows that we're taking actions based on data. So we're not just making assumptions about what the issues are, we're actually looking at the data and taking actions that are appropriate based on that data. And that's really important because we know there's an issue, but until we look at the data and do a detailed analysis, we don't necessarily know exactly where that issue lies and where the problems with regards to progression are. And the other thing that it does is really encourages others, I think, to be open and transparent about their issues and their pay gaps as well.
Thank you so much. Still on the topic of pay gaps, the class pay gap can be as big as £6,718, dependent on industry. And I'm wondering if that is a figure that actually surprises anybody.
I mean, it's pretty stark, isn't it, when you say it like that? Because we're not talking about, we're talking about people who are in the same industry or profession. We talk about very often people who've come through the same recruitment process, that have very similar qualifications. So some of the obvious stuff that you can say about, maybe a different socioeconomic background might mean an education gap or different qualifications. We're not talking about that. We're talking about how you've progressed, the kinds of jobs you've had, the kinds of opportunities you've had in organisations, your progression in your sector. So it's pretty stark when you think about it, because it is telling you that there is something that is not, you can't just push it down and say, well, it's about education, or it's about kind of universities, or it's, you know, it's a decision that's happening somewhere else. It's something that's happening in the organisations across all the different sectors that, you know, we are responsible for leading and supporting. Something's happening in those organisations that means you're not giving people the same opportunities to progress. So it's pretty stark when you put a number on it, and it should be, because that's wrong. That's wrong. You know, it's a signal that something is wrong, and it's as you know, as we've talked about, it's a signal that something is wrong that's not helping us. Those are people in organisations who have things to contribute. They have talent. They have things that they can offer. You're missing them. You're holding them back. You're not making kind of the best decisions. So yeah, it should be pretty, you know, it's where we started with this whole thing. It's how do we bring that starkness and that shockingness to life in a way that people say, okay, I want to know more. I want to do something about that.
Of course, it feels like sort of part of a vicious cycle, I suppose. If after everything, despite, you know, apparently beating all of those insurmountable hurdles, there's still that very present gap. Do you guys have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I mean, I'll just say, as someone who's spent far too long looking at these pay gaps, there's also a really important intersectional dimension that I think is really crucial to bring into this conversation, that you also see very powerfully when you look at the data. So women from working class backgrounds, for example, earn, you know, there's a pay penalty that they suffer that's actually greater than the gender and the class pay gap put together. So there's something about being at that intersection that carries with it a particular disadvantage in the labour market. And similarly, you see a double disadvantage for most, not all, but most socially mobile black and minority ethnic professionals as well. So I think it's really important to sort of keep that as part of the conversation here in terms of how these inequalities will play out.
Thank you so much. We just have one last question before we take it out to the audience, which is, how can we make sure that this conversation does continue, and how can we keep, you know, the class pay gap in particular in the public's thoughts?
So I said at the beginning, please, if you've been inspired what you've seen today, share it, talk to people about it. If you work in an organisation where you can show the film, and it might start that conversation, talk about what you've heard, please share this conversation, because it's so important that the room of people having this conversation is as big as possible. Please support us in what we're doing. Please back us. We're a small organisation with an enormous mountain to climb, so please back us and support us and be part of it. And please yourself feel brave and confident about having these difficult personal conversations. Please be brave and confident about saying, you know, I am not exclusively my background, but my background is part of my story, because that may be an enormous gift you can give to someone. If you talk about your background, it may be an enormous gift to free someone up to say, I'm so glad you've said that. Can I share where I'm coming from? So everybody, however big or small your sphere, has got the power to make an enormous gift to say to people, look, you know, let's talk about the difference it's made.
Thanks so much, Holly.
I think as employers, what we can do is measure it. So get the data, measure the socioeconomic background of your people, of your employees, and measure your pay gap, and then publish it. So just, you know, do it and talk about it, and encourage others to do it.
Thanks so much, Hannah.
Yeah, just like Holly said, I think transparency of pay, I think that's a massive thing. Hopefully Accenture do a similar thing to PwC in that respect. I think diversity should be like a core value with all companies. I think they should be more proactive. And like I said, not just say that they're diverse and claim to be diverse when they're not actually doing anything about it. So I think that's a massive thing. More awareness, of course. You know, events like this are amazing. And yeah, just more authentic conversations. I feel like it's just surface level when employees talk to me or ask me about, you know, how I feel about working here and that. But I think, yeah, there should be more of a proactive effort. I think it's the main thing.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I think what I was thinking when I was watching the film, having taught this stuff in university and done lots of talks where there's a sort of fairly didactic delivery of the information. I think there's something really powerful about creative ways to bring these sorts of issues to light that channel and prompt people's actual lived experience of this stuff. And that is going to be much more useful for starting the conversation than academic research, for example. So I think other vehicles for this in other mediums would be fantastic, because I think that's what really engages people.
Thank you so much, and thank you to the rest of our brilliant panellists. Can we have a round of applause? Thank you. So we have slightly run over, but I'm hoping you guys are enjoying the conversation as much as I am, and we'll probably just have like 5 minutes for audience questions. Does anyone have a burn? Oh, yep, right in the front. You, please. Please introduce yourself before you ask your question, rather.
My name's Grace. I work at PwC in Holly's social mobility team. So my question is for Sarah and for Sam, but anyone can weigh in on it, really. I was pretty horrified to hear that one of the filming locations was not comfortable to ascribe to this message, and really proud to work for an organisation who are doing hopefully the opposite by being here and really celebrating that we need to share this message, and also being transparent about the fact that we have a pay gap at PwC. There is an issue. What do you think is the difference between organisations who feel they can be transparent and share their data versus those who aren't in a position to feel comfortable with that message?
Who would like to take that?
Good question. I'd pick a couple of things. I think there's what I've noticed over the years in various sectors is that you need a sort of first mover, and usually that comes from somebody or a collection of fairly enlightened people at the top of an organisation that's willing to sort of take a risk on this and bring it to the fore, and then there's a kind of domino effect. And I think you've seen that in various industries, and you guys have played that role to some extent in professional services, but you're seeing the same now with broadcasters, you're seeing it in accountancy, but you also see other areas, including my employer, including my profession, higher education, where the conversation, bizarrely, is a complete non-starter. And so I think there's something about why those conversations have started in some places rather than others. But I would also come back to the point I made before. Secretly, I think often a lot of people don't really believe this. So I think they are, Sarah talked about the fact that, and we've sort of done this in our class pay gap analysis. Let's try and take all the things people are maybe thinking but not saying. Oh, isn't this just about maybe people from privileged backgrounds just are they're socialised to work a bit harder or to be a bit more ambitious, and we can do all sorts of analysis to go no that's not it, no that's not it, no that's not it. I think though that is often what's kind of driving the lack of progress, is that people don't really believe that this is the case. So I think you have to do a lot of work to dislodge that. And that's happened in some industries and it hasn't happened in others, and hopefully it will start to.
Sorry, can I just chip in? Sorry, really quickly to bang on about data again, but that's why the data is so important. In a firm of accountants, they want to see where the issue is, and actually if you can present them with the data, there's no disbelieving it once you've got the data in front of you.
Yeah, I mean, Sam's right. The kind of first mover thing is important because this is often about risk. And when you're talking about who you recruit and you're talking about people you spend time and money on and invest in, there's this real worry that if we don't have the best people and if our competitors get the best people, we won't be as good. And I think it's partly it's about having that conversation about is this really working for you? If you're all scrapping over a tiny number of privileged people for a particular pool, is this working for anybody, for you, for them, for anybody else? But it is also about trying, part of our job is to try and help balance out the risk by showing the opportunity of working with the brilliant young people that we get to work with and saying, why would you not hire people like Hannah? Because you don't need any kind of excuse, or you just need to hire really good people, and here's some. We try and take the risk out by trying to support with all of that, with the work that we do, to give kind of backup. And we also try and support it, as Sam Holland talked about, with the evidence that this works. But I think in the end you need a leader to say, we're going to do this, and I'm going to take a step. And those are the really exciting organisations, because they do then take a lead, and then others are like, it's a bit less risky because we can follow in their wake, and that's when you get the wave. But yeah, in the end you need someone to make a big decision.
Thank you so much. Any other questions?
I've got a mic here, I think.
I can't see you, but I can hear you. Hello. Sir.
I was just wondering what the role, as you guys see it, for trades unions is in this conversation. I think it's interesting in the UK, often sort of trade unionism gets seen as a bit sort of radical or a throwback, and I think that says something interesting about our attitude to class in itself. But if you look at countries like Germany or the Nordics, very moderate, very cautious countries, and the role that sectoral bargaining and things like that play there in equality and in labour outcomes, clearly there's some kind of role to play. So, yeah, interested in what trade unions as organisations or at the policy level in terms of creating an environment for them can play in this.
That's a really good question. Does anyone have thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think a really big role. I think it changes the conversation a bit, but in ways that I think are good. I mean, first of all, I did work with the TUC actually on a sort of classism in the workplace campaign, and I think that was useful. But I think trade unions also bring out a wider issue here about inequality and pay inequality more generally. I think one of the sort of things that not everyone in this room will perhaps want to talk about, but that's absolutely central, I think, in understanding the conditions on which you end up with incredibly unequal starting points in life that create these different opportunities, is the fact that we have incredibly high levels of pay inequality, and often in these types of organisations, and having a conversation about that is, I think, really important, about the ratio of CEO or pay pegged to others in organisations, the sorts of conversations about inequality more broadly in the workplace that trade unions bring to bear, I think is really crucial. That's just my personal opinion.
I think we have time for one last short question. Your arm is super high, right at the back. Yes, you. Hi. Oh yeah, sorry. I probably shouldn't have picked you. You're so far back. Somebody.
Sorry. I've got the mic at the moment, and I just really wanted to ask this one.
Feel free. It's a safe space.
I think it's important. You touched on it briefly. I'm mindful of the phrase, the snow-capped mountain effect. So the higher you go, the whiter it gets. That exists, I think, in almost every sector. And I wondered if it was possible to talk about a lack of class representation without also talking explicitly about structural racism. And I also wondered if PwC, the stats around pay gaps and ethnic diversity are stats that are included in your reporting, but that's for everybody. Sorry to interrupt you.
That was a great question. And whilst you guys answer this, could somebody somehow get the mic, crowd surf it to the back? Yeah. Who'd like to answer that?
Well, I can start on the PwC point if that's helpful. So yeah, absolutely. So we publish our gender pay gap, our ethnicity pay gap, and we break our ethnicity pay gap down as well into different ethnicities, and we do look at the intersectionality of the data. So we look at not just socioeconomic background, but we look at how there's a double disadvantage almost for people from ethnic minorities and for women as well. So yeah, it's absolutely something that we're very focused on, and we work on it as a whole inclusion team. So we include socioeconomic background as an aspect of diversity, looking at it alongside all the other diversity characteristics.
Yeah, just very briefly on that, you're absolutely right. one of the worst things that any employer can say to us is we're really focused at the moment on dealing with our ethnicity issues, so we'll get to social mobility in a bit, which is kind of, you know, that's not how this works. People are not one thing. You can't deal with one thing. People are people, and the overlap between working class communities and immigrant communities is significant and huge. And Sam talks about, you know, the disadvantage is not just doubled, it's multiplied sometimes, the kinds of issues about kind of positive role models and positive cultures and positive identities. So it's incredibly important that we have this same conversation. It's also incredibly important we do not let social mobility be pitted against anti-racism as though they're sort of, you can only put your energy into one thing. It's one inclusion, it's one conversation. Thank you.
Shall I go last?
Yes, please.
So my question kind of comes or evolves from Thomas's, again, trying to find an organisation that will let you film. I work in construction. I was told by a professional institution, oh, darling, don't use the word construction for real estate because nobody will like that at all. And I was actually convinced by this lady that I would not be listened to. So construction's a massive industry. PwC have an awful lot to do with that. Where is the supply chain in this? Where is the social value measurement? Because we can actually include ethnicity in social value measurement. We talk about a white boy going into, from a very, very deprived background. You've all heard of JWIC maybe and Benefits by the Sea. This boy has risen to the top like cream with a global corporation, and yet the employer will not celebrate his success to get to the finalist of a Young Apprentice of the Year unless he wins. And I think that's possibly to do with his demographic, perhaps the colour of his skin. Where is the supply chain in all this? So when you're winning work, why can't that be included as well, that you are actually vocal around what is your class background? If that makes sense.
Yeah, I think it is in the supply chain, you know, and I think it absolutely should be. And I think, you know, organisations have started to take action around this. We have, but we've still got more to do. And I think the ideal place we want to get to is where when we're tendering for work, when we're tendering for our suppliers, you know, we are asking questions about diversity and inclusion and the actions that they're taking. We already ask questions about, you know, whether they're paying living wage, what the conditions are like for their staff, but we want to definitely get better at asking them, what are the specific actions you're taking around diversity and inclusion, and taking that into account. And our clients do that with us. So, you know, people might be aware there's a Social Value Act whereby when you bid for, you know, local government work or national government work, you have to show what social value you're going to bring as part of that contract. So I think it absolutely should and is starting to be embedded within the supply chain, but there's more work to do.
Does anyone else have anything to add before I close? Can I have another round of applause, please? Thanks so much, guys, for being here. I heard something about drinks. Yeah, I'm seeing the drink, the international drink sign. Where are they going to be? In the hub, wherever that is. Thanks so much, guys. Thanks.